You know, a few years back, a book came out that made millions of people, myself included, pretty terrified of our alarm clocks. It was called Why We Sleep, and it was a total phenomenon. But what if some of its most alarming claims weren't, well, the whole story? Today, we're going to unpack the book, the science, and the absolute firestorm that followed.
Yeah, that's the kind of line that just stops you in your tracks, right? The book is packed with these incredibly high-stakes claims. It wasn't just saying a lack of sleep makes you tired. It was saying it's a life-threatening problem. And that alarming tone, that's exactly why it hit home for so many people.
So the whole idea behind the book is this. We are smack in the middle of a sleep loss epidemic, as the World Health Organization apparently called it. And this isn't just a minor issue. It's presented as a catastrophe with terrible consequences for our health, our safety, and even how long we live.
And honestly, it's tough to really explain just how huge this book was. The author, Mathew, he became the world's go-to guy for anything sleep-related. He was arguing that pretty much every major disease we see in the developed world, we're talking cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, obesity, had a direct link back to not getting enough sleep.
And to really drive his point home, Walker uses some absolutely jaw-dropping numbers. Take this one, 460%. That's the supposed increase in diagnostic mistakes made by medical residents who are working a crazy 30-hour shift compared to when they're rested. I mean, a number that big, it's definitely going to make you sit up and pay attention.
But you know, it wasn't all scary stuff. The book also framed sleep as this kind of miracle cure. It was like nature's ultimate fix-it-all that could solve a ton of our problems, if only we just get enough of it. So, the book basically paints sleep as this incredible cure-all. It's going to make you smarter, more creative, more emotionally stable, and physically healthier. Walker even went so far as to call it Mother Nature's best effort yet at contra death. That's a powerful message, right? A single, free solution to all our modern worries.
But here's the thing. When you get that famous, you also get put under a microscope. Other scientists started digging into the claims, and they began to notice that, well, maybe some of the science wasn't quite as clear-cut as the book made it sound. And this is where things really kicked off. An independent researcher, Alexei Gazet, published this super detailed critique of the book that just went viral. He pointed out what he called a ton of scientific and factual errors, and it just kicked off this huge debate online and in the science community.
Okay, so one of the biggest points of disagreement is about how long we live. The book presents this really simple straight line: sleep less, live shorter. But critics immediately pointed to these massive studies that show something more like a U-shaped curve. Turns out, people who sleep around 7 hours a night tend to live the longest, while folks on both extremes, too little and too much sleep, show higher mortality rates. So the reality? It's a little more complicated.
And remember that absolutely terrifying quote about cancer we started with? Well, critics came back at it with some serious evidence. Check this out. A massive meta-analysis looked at 65 different studies with over 1.5 million people and found no clear link between how long you sleep and your risk of cancer. That directly challenges one of the scariest claims in the whole book.
And the criticism, it actually went a lot deeper than just disagreeing on the facts. The most serious accusation against Why We Sleep was that it didn't just get some things wrong, but that it was selectively presenting data to build a narrative that was way more dramatic than the original science actually supported.
All right, so perfect example that critics point to is this chart right here. It's from a study on teenage athletes. The way it's shown in the book, the message seems obvious. The more you sleep, from 5 hours up to 8, the less likely you are to get hurt. Simple. It looks like a perfect downward slope.
But, and this is a big but, if you go back to the original scientific paper, the chart looks like this. It includes another bar for athletes who slept 9 hours. And at 9 hours, the injury risk actually ticks back up a little. Now, it's not a huge jump, but it kind of breaks that super simple, perfect narrative that more sleep is always better.
And for the critics, this is basically the smoking gun. Leaving out that one data point completely changes the story. It goes from a simple rule to a much more nuanced picture. Some have even said this gets into pretty serious territory because you're leaving out a piece of data that actually changes the takeaway.
So, what are we supposed to believe now? I mean, this is where most of us just throw our hands up, right? When the experts are fighting it out and the science looks like it's saying two different things, how are we supposed to figure out what's actually good for our own health?
Okay, so let's cut through the noise. Where does this whole debate leave you and me? Well, despite all the back and forth on the details, there's actually a pretty clear consensus that we can work with.
Here's the bottom line, really. Nobody, not Walker, not his critics, nobody, is arguing that sleep isn't important. It's absolutely crucial. The big fight is over the exact numbers, just how severe the risks are, and whether more is always better. But the core message? It's still solid. Take your sleep seriously.
So what can you actually do? Well, these tips for what's called sleep hygiene are completely non-controversial. And funnily enough, a lot of them come straight from the appendix of Why We Sleep itself. Things like consistency, going to bed and waking up at the same time, keeping your room cool and dark, and avoiding stuff like caffeine before bed, these are proven ways to sleep better no matter who's winning the debate.
And you know, all of this leaves us with an even bigger question. This whole story isn't just about sleep. It's really about how science gets communicated and how challenging it is for all of us to navigate a world full of bold claims, complicated data, and experts who don't always agree. It's a good reminder that science is a process, not just a book of final answers.